Okay. Hey. Just saying hi. Nothing hostile, don't worry. So basically, yeah, I want to be talking about releases and get the mouse cursor out of the way. And how we created this tool called Crane to kind of help with managing the releases the same way Stano talked about how we're managing the incidents. It's basically the same story, different tool, and a bit of a different approach. Okay, so, yeah, the clicker is giving me some trouble, but that's alright. This part is always boring, so I will keep it really short. I'm Bence, and I lead the software platform squad, which is one part of platform team at Kiwi.
Smile.
Oh, hi. This is awkward, like you need to stay like this, freeze for seconds now. Okay, but yeah, you don't come here to like hear about me. One quick question. Does anyone here speak Hungarian? Show of hands. That sucks because the rest of the talk is in Hungarian. Okay, I'll try to translate. All right, so basically we have this big problem with releases that one person needs to take manual steps and like lots of times. You probably see the problem already, but I'll get into more detail later. First, I also need to talk about the other big problem, which is that many people need to know many things about the releases. And yeah, both of these things suck. I'll just describe why and right now. All right, so the first problem with this doing the same manual steps many times, the problem is first of all that it's a colossal waste of time when engineers, instead of coding or doing something useful, have to just run the same commands over and over, wait for deployments to finish, and then finish the upgrade or whatever. This is a waste of time, and if you're a startup like we are, like basically time is your most valuable resource. So you really don't want to be wasting that time with releasing. And the second thing, the other most valuable resource you have in a startup is like people and people's motivation. And these manual release processes are like absolutely no fun. Everyone, like there's literally no person who looks forward to running the commands on a server to release. There's no fulfillment, no nothing in it. So it's like the perfect thing to automate already just for these two reasons. But in fact, there's like an even more important reason for automating releases, which is obviously all the mistakes. And specifically, I want to talk about the last line effect. While researching some like psychology-related things, I stumbled upon like engineering and psychology-related things. I stumbled upon this phenomenon called the last line effect, which was described on this blog right here. The point is that there's this company. They are doing static code analysis. They're creating a tool for static analysis of code, and they're like manually trying to categorize mistakes as part of their research. And they found that tons of mistakes, shit tons of mistakes are just copy-pasting errors, right? So here's one of the examples they brought up. This is from Quake 3, because apparently Quake 3's code is open source, which is pretty cool. So the programmer was just trying to, I'm not actually sure what the variables are, it's not really important, but you can clearly see that this is an if condition where they copy pasted the same thing 3 times and they forgot to change it the last time. And like obviously there's like a third axis that they wanted to check or something, and they forgot to change it. So the thing here is that the company who was researching this in open source projects found 84 copy-paste errors. And they looked at them and they found that actually more than half of them had the mistake on the last line. So there is specifically something special about the last line that's like really makes people make mistakes. And in the article, again, like I'll put up the URL here. I guess you will have to follow me on Twitter to actually see the URL and be able to click on it, because I don't think this works. Point is, they mentioned also that there's a similar phenomenon for mountain climbers. Like when somebody is climbing a mountain, very often what happens is that they just fall or make a mistake at the last couple meters or the last 10 meters of the climb. Because like there's some sort of a rush when you're finally done with all these monotonous same tasks that you're doing over and over again, and you just stop paying attention because you're just so overjoyed that finally it's over, I'm almost there. And the same way when you make people make the same things over and over again, in this case releasing, where not only are you releasing multiple times per day, usually at our size definitely, but also even in the release process, you have the same tasks over and over and again, like you deploy on server 1, deploy on server 2, deploy on server 3, or maybe you're deploying some sort of connected services, so you deploy service 1, service 2, service 3. So all of these manual tasks are just super prone to mistakes, and that's definitely, yeah?
I will interrupt.
Oh yeah, that's fine. So I've been basically talking about the same thing over and over again here as well, so I'll just skip forward, I guess. And I'll put up the next intriguing slide, solution, while the drinks are being given out. All right, so we have a solution for all this, and you should prepare to be underwhelmed, because like it's like a really tiny thing actually. And I don't know, the slides aren't doing, yeah, so, okay, I'm just kidding, like it's actually, like I can zoom it. All right, so this is our release process. This is a screenshot from GitLab where we track our code and all the changes, commits and everything. It's also what's running the tests, continuous integration. We just have one button for deploying to production. There's literally, like we reduced the entire process to one single click. And I would dare to say that in this special case, it's even fun to press that one button. Like I said previously, there's no fun in releasing, but like there's still like some sort of a rush that you're releasing something out in the world, and if it's one click, then like what the hell? Like of course it's fun. And this really was the main philosophy driving the development of this open source tool, Crane, that we have. You really shouldn't do anything other than one click. And I remember this one story I heard from a Budapest company called Prezi. They make presentation software, but that's kind of irrelevant. Basically, they also really wanted to automate their releases, just like we did, but they just got like one step, they stopped one step too short. So what they had is like one shell script on a server, which takes an argument, which is the new version you want to deploy. You just put there the git commit hash that you want to deploy. So there was just one tiny step that people could mess up, and of course they messed it up and they didn't expect it. Like one developer thought that they could just put there a branch name instead of the commit hash, and somehow that took down their entire infrastructure. So yeah, really, like we wanted nothing other than one click. All right, so what does this button actually do? Yeah, like this one, I really want to know, like, yeah, okay. So this one button, first, it asks GitLab CI to launch the script, train. The script launches, and it collects information from our container orchestration system, Rancher, and from GitLab about the release. So it collects stuff like what was the old version. From GitLab it collects the commit history, the name of the releaser, and so on. And then once it has all the information it needs, like what a human would need to make a release, a deployment, it just upgrades the containers using the Rancher API. Okay, I think it's time for an intermission since people have like lots of drinks anyway. I'll just talk about, oh shit, I'm too loud. Sorry guys. They closed the window. Okay, anyway, this stupid hack that we found for writing Crane, it's like, I really cannot endorse this or anything, but it's just so fucking good. Like, I really need to talk about it. So, like, normally your architecture for an integration like this would be to have 3 components. And you know what, I'll just switch to the other clicker because this is really annoying. Basically, the 3 components that you have, I'll just describe it without the slides for now. First of all, you definitely have the GitLab CI runner, which is able to run jobs for you. Second, I really hope they're not going to interfere. And yeah, much better. Okay, so first component, you have this task runner, which is able to run all the tasks that you're asking for. So first, before lunch, you want to deploy something. After lunch, you want to revert it. And at the end of the day, once you fixed whatever broke during lunch, you redeploy. And it's just something like Jenkins, or in our case, GitLab CI, which is able to run scripts. The second component you need is the script that posts messages to Slack, right? That's Crane. And the third component is, since the deployments have some data associated with them, you somehow need to store this deployment data into a database. I wish I knew that we were like the chairs were all like bunched up, because I wouldn't have written anything down here. I'm sorry I'm sorry about it, guys in the back. I see that you're constantly struggling to see the text down there. But anyway, we have three things. And the test runner, obviously, that's like, we need it. Posting messages to Slack, which is like one of our dependencies. We like Slack. I colored it green here because Slack is not maintained by us. If it goes down, it's not our problem. They will fix it. So we really like the Slack part. But this database, like I'm coloring that red for the guys at the back, like because I really hate the database part. I don't want to manage a database just for this one tool, and I don't know how to get the credentials to everyone so that everybody's jobs can connect to it with maybe different user accounts, different permissions. Like, this is so stupid, and I don't even know, like, what do I use as a database? There are options like PostgreSQL or MySQL, super complicated. I don't want to manage those. Or I could use Redis to store data, or S3 buckets. Those are actually kind of better, or something like DynamoDB. But yeah, okay. So here's the stupid, idiotic hack that we found. Instead of using any of these options, we store all the data inside Slack. And let me just explain how we use Slack as a database. Let's talk about Slack message formatting. You have URLs in Slack. You can just, you're probably familiar with something like this. You put the URL in the message, and then the label for the URL, and it just shows up like Google. What happens, I wonder, if instead of putting Google as the label, we have an empty label? It shows up as nothing in the message. So we have this possibility of having a URL which is completely invisible to users, and the URL can be anything. So let's just put all the data inside this hidden URL. And that's how we store the deployment data from Crane without needing a database. Yeah, it's beautiful. So in general, our deployment database looks like that. This part is the database. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to the actual main topic about solving all these problems. So we had this second problem, that so many people want so many things, and you keep having to answer questions when you're deploying. So let me just show you what it looks like, this accurate simulation of a releaser's life. Okay, we don't need to read all the questions. You probably can imagine some of them, and the details don't really matter. But here's the solution we figured out for this, like the endless questions that the releasers are being bothered with. We just create a really nice formatted message, just like in Phoenix, to have all the information available for everyone. And yeah, I'll let you look at it for a couple seconds. And I finally figured out why the clicker isn't working, because the MacBook is shielding the receiver. It's so stupid. Let me just put it up here. Okay, let me just keep it down there. Never mind. That works for me. So, what actually makes this Slack message a good hub of information? I tried to think about this sort of information design or communication, and I basically identified 4 different ways that one of these information messages works well. First of all, coverage. You should have all the data available to you that could be relevant. Pretty obvious. And you kind of need to strike a balance. You don't want to put too much data into that one message. You don't want it to get too noisy. One example, you would definitely not put the entire commit, the entire patch inside this one message. But that's what the second point is for. You place links. You link everything. I think a good rule of thumb is to have 80% of the message as links and as blue. And then you're probably letting people get to the correct information on their own enough. But then there are these 2 things can be done by humans, the human releasers who are just following the checklist or whatever. But there's 2 things that machines can do way better than we can. First one, it usually is able to direct attention very effectively. And what I mean by this is, if for instance somebody is reverting a previous release, then it definitely deserves more attention in the log than any other release. Like, this probably signals that there was something wrong, and people reading the endless list of releases should notice that something was wrong here. Which is why we add like tiny little, like warning sign emojis there. And the reason I'm saying that humans cannot really do this well is because this is only really useful if you can depend on it 100%. That anytime there is something wrong, there will be a warning sign. If one person forgets one time, then it's already useless, because you cannot trust that the system works, and you just need to read through everything anyway, because you don't trust that you will know if there's an issue. And the other thing that humans cannot do properly is notifying the correct people at the correct time. With Crane, it just basically knows when to send notifications to whom, which, again, if you put this in a checklist and one person forgets about it one time, the entire system is useless, because everybody will be kind of living in constant fear that maybe there's something happening that I don't know about because somebody made a mistake. Now that we have Crane, we know that there are no mistakes. Like, you always know when you need to know about something with releases. Okay, so let's just quickly look through the message. These 4 points I mentioned, I put up there, and I'll just try to, just to make sure everyone understands, I'll try to point out which elements are on which parts of the message. So first of all, we have the title of the release. Obviously, it tells you which service has a release. And again, this is definitely data coverage, and it's also linking to the release itself, the build logs of the release. So that's coverage and links. All right. Then you have stuff like the timestamp. It's actually a pretty nice implicit feature like that, because the machine always announces at the exact time when the release starts. You have an exact log of when releases happened. Then we have this first thing that actually directs attention when somebody is rolling back something. There's the warning sign. With the change log, change another thing, that's right. You have a link to the commits, and this one is actually notifying people. And the way that works is engineers often need to tell people about what features they are deploying. Let's say you're adding hotel content to the website, to the kiwi.com website, so we start selling hotels. And definitely our customer support needs to know that from now on you will receive questions about hotels. So in this case, the developer just writes the names of the people who should know about the release in the commit message. You write CC, Jožo, Martin Striček, whatever. And the relevant people are committed in Git. And when the release is going out, Crane checks the commits and tags and notifies everybody who needs to know about it. This would be much less reliable if you had a different releaser who doesn't actually know what the feature is for, and so on. But yeah, let's just move on, because there's lots of things to go over and I don't want to talk so much about every single thing. So yeah, we have the environment that is having a deployment. This is also pretty nice. It's directing people's attention, because if a release fails, you get a huge, nice, really threatening red X. So everyone notices immediately that something is wrong. Other things we have are, of course, the branch, links to the Docker image and stack, the name of the releaser, which is also great for notifying, because of the next thing we have, which is the thread. If anyone is not using Slack, probably most of you are familiar with it, but you basically can have threaded conversations on Slack. Somebody can just reply to this message, which was the announcement. And this is actually amazing. This is really another implicit feature we got from Slack just by integrating on them. And what it does is, because there's a predictable log of all the releases, everyone always knows where to go if they want to ask a question about a specific release. You know that there's going to be a thread for discussing it for every single case. Otherwise, you would have to try to figure out who is responsible for this and what channel they are using for communication and so on. All right. So the number of questions that this answers implicitly is 19, which is, I think, pretty good. 19 questions that the releaser doesn't have to be bothered with. And okay, fine, obviously not all of these questions are going to be asked for every single release. So if we say 10%, then fine. It's we saved the releaser from 2 questions, but that's per release. So like 100 per day with the amount of releases we have, that's lots of time saved. And not only that, we also get the benefits, as I mentioned, of directing the attention of people and notifying people. And the last thing that we get as a benefit is an actual cultural impact. I don't have any hard data about this, but I think when we tried all the teams to try and switch over to automated releases, automated deployments, Crane honestly really helped this mission. When you go to a team and you tell them that, hey, you are wasting your time with manual releasing, you should upgrade and you should write a system for automatically releasing, you should migrate to Docker or whatever, half of them they're always going to kind of resist, and they say, we don't have the time for this, we need to ship features, we cannot upgrade this infrastructure. But by actually making Crane something so visible, where the early adopters were the fancy guys on Slack, and everybody it's just such a shiny message and everything, next to all the plain text announcements by the lame teams who didn't upgrade yet. It actually gives you some sort of a social pressure and a great cultural impact that it pushes people to upgrade their methodologies. And that's, I think, maybe the best benefit. All right, so that's Crane. Thank you very much. It's open source. It's been open source for a year, I think. You might not be able to use it very well unless you use the exact same container orchestration we have, and the same, unless you also use GitLab CI. But I think even just copy pasting most of the code, for instance the Slack message, and integrating it with whatever you have for releasing, even if it's an SSH script, would be pretty useful. So yeah, thanks.